Where I left off the last time was I was getting ready to pull vacuum on the air conditioning system with my brand new vacuum pump, but I didn't have the manifold gauges down here at the shop. They were up at the house, and so I called it a day. So I went and I actually bought new manifold gauges from Harbor Freight because I'll get into this a little bit more later, but mine didn't have a valve here or here. It didn't have a pressure relief valve to purge the air out when you go to put in the refrigerant. You would have had to unscrew this and purge it that way. It also didn't have shut-off valves down at the connection to the fittings on the air conditioning system. It did have them on the red and blue lines. There was a valve about 6 or 8 inches up that you could turn off. But the big thing, and I'll show you this again later, but on this one you can read the negative pressure when you're pulling the vacuum. Mine had a stop at 0, so even if you got negative, that dial wasn't going to go past 0. There were no markings for reading an accurate number, but if they didn't have a stop and it allowed you to pull, you could actually get an idea where it was, but there was a dead stop right there, and it wasn't going to go below 0. So I was going to either have to buy a separate vacuum gauge and hook it in line somehow between here and the pump, or I could buy this. This was, I just joined the what do they call their club, but it's a members only club that gets you special deals on some things, and I joined it when I bought the vacuum pump because it was on sale and it was going to get me $20 off on that, and then I got 16 off on this, so I'm already ahead of the game for that year membership in their club. But I'll show you that more as I unpack it. The other thing that I had to buy, which I had a can of a shut-off valve for the refrigerant cans from my old manifold, and it could be used to add refrigerant because you don't need to pull vacuum if you're just adding, if it's slowly leaked out over the years. But the only thing I had was 134A with stop leak in it, and I didn't want to put stop leak in my brand new system, so I also bought a new tap valve. But in thinking about this, I may have caused myself a problem because you see this little part of the instruction here that tells you to hold with this wrench and twist with this wrench. Because I didn't look at these instructions, I just figured, I just have to tighten up the places where I had it loose. I did this backwards. I twisted with this wrench and I held with this wrench, and so I may have caused myself a leak. But I am going to put it on, see if I can hold vacuum. If I can, we're good. If I can't, then I will have to come back in here, and this is where I did it, way down in here, right down there, because it was, I put the wrench on the big one first, and then I tightened with that one. I should have done it the other way. So this is going to be an interesting test. Now, I'm sure I'm not going to be able to video this because of the location of these fittings on here. I'll find a place to hook up my light. There. Okay, so there's two service valves here, and I have not zip tied that up out of the way yet, but the two service valves, that's not good. That pulled out too easily. I'm gonna have to make sure I get that latched in there. But one of them is bigger. The blue one's the low pressure line. The red one is the high pressure line. They're different sizes, so you can't hook up the gauge wrong. But I'll show you, since I won't be able to get the camera in here while I'm working on it, because I don't have a tripod that will do that. I'll show you what I'm going to do with the connections. But these caps just screw off pretty easy. And there are fittings similar to air hose fittings that you pull back on it, push it on, and let it go, and it engages and seals. But I'll show you that once I unbox the new set of manifold gauges. So I watched some videos that were already out there on YouTube, and amazingly, every one of them used this set of gauges from Harbor Freight. You could tell if they weren't from Harbor Freight, they looked identical. But enough about that. Concerning that O-ring that I tightened the wrong end of the nut, I have a little bit of hope that I'm going to be able to do that, or I'm going to get a good connection, if you will. And that is, the reason for that is that the trinary valve that I put on, trinary switch I guess it is, it had the O-ring on, and you had to tighten it with the equivalent of the side that they told you not to turn, because what it was doing was the O-ring was on the end of that trinary switch, and as you tightened it in, it was spinning between where you were tightening and where it was seating, and that's basically what's going to happen because of this. Now here's an interesting thing about this set. I don't know why they did it this way, but you've got two sets of valves in here. You've got low pressure and high pressure, and that connect to the gauges, and you have the connections that go to the service ports. Okay. On the manifold valve up here, both of these, to close it, you turn it clockwise, and you turn it counterclockwise to open. Down on the couplers for the service port, closing it is counterclockwise and opening it is clockwise, which is exactly the opposite of the ones up on the manifold. So it's kind of confusing, I guess, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with them all in the closed position. I've already done the low pressure, so this says to close. I go counterclockwise. The reason I'm doing this is if I start with them all in closed position, then I know that what I've got to do is just turn them the only way they'll go to open them. And then once they're open and I want to close them, they're only going to turn one way that way. So that's what I'm going to do. So I am going to just take these off, connect the hoses, which according to the picture, the curved fitting is the one that goes up by the manifold. The straight fitting gets connected to, well, this would be the valve for the refrigerant. The red and blue hoses would be to the shutoff valves for the service ports. So I am going to start doing that, and that is there's a Schrader valve in there that you can press to purge the air out of this line when you put the refrigerant on. I kind of wish those those caps were a little tighter. They seem like they can fall off. Now, these connections, they say hand tight only. Do not use a wrench on them. Otherwise, you'll destroy the seals. So, compared to the manifold I replaced, these are nice long hoses. So, I'm going to do the red or high pressure hose next. And again, I wish that was again just finger tight. And these things here that look like they are fittings, the only purpose of those is to give you a place to store these. So you can connect your hoses up here when you're not using them. I will probably disassemble the entire thing and put it back in the case. So assembling this is pretty easy. Now I showed you the service ports, and I showed you the storage port. So all I'll be doing when I'm under the hood there, hooking this up, is pulling that back like that, pushing it on, letting it go. To disconnect, you pull it off, remove it. So I'm not going to bother to film or video the connecting the blue line, the low pressure line. I will connect that, and then I will connect it to the service ports and hang it up, and then I'll be back to connect the vacuum pump. Okay, here we are. I've got them connected. This is the low pressure service port. High pressure is down here. These are closed. I need to open those by turning them clockwise. Or in other words, the only way they'll turn, because that's the way I set it up. Then they go up to the manifold, and I have to open these both to draw the vacuum by turning them counterclockwise. Hopefully that'll stay like that. That'll be easier to see. And then the yellow goes to my pump. And it's connected there. So this is the moment of truth, I guess. Coming out of there is normal. That's showing that it's sucking stuff out of the system. It's showing 28, almost 30. Pounds of vacuum in that system now. So I need to run that for about 10 minutes to make sure that I have it evacuated at least enough to close it off and test that it's going to hold that vacuum, because having it there while the pump is running is not really an indicator. Okay, it's time to close off those valves up there at the manifold, which all they do is shut off the connection between the yellow charging hose and the other two hoses. So they will still be connected to the air conditioner system, so that the manifold will read the vacuum that's in the system. So I'm reading 28 pounds of vacuum. Okay, those are shut. I'm going to turn off the pump. Now this is not a complete evacuation of the system. This is just a quick test to make sure that it doesn't leak down as soon as I disconnect the vacuum pump. So far it's holding. I'm going to leave that set for a while, and I will come back and give an update. Okay, it's been 10 minutes and there's been absolutely no change in the vacuum reading there. Unfortunately, that reflection of the light is hiding the gauge. And if I move over where it's more direct, it's actually worse glare. So you're kind of going to have to take my word for it, I think. Let's try that, see if that is any better. It's a little bit better. See if I can move the camera. Okay, there you can see it's about 28 psi of vacuum. Now, I am not going to charge this system just yet because I don't have the car running. But in my mind, it was necessary for me to get this air conditioner connected so that I could put in the vacuum tank for the headlights and things like that. And I had to know that this was going to hold a vacuum. And conversely, when I charge it, pressure. So before you charge it, you have to draw down the vacuum to get all the moisture out of the system for like 45 minutes. So I am going to do that now, and I will do it again before I charge it so that I'm absolutely certain that it's all dry in there. So for now, I'm gonna just turn this on and let it run for about 45 minutes. Oops, I better open the valves. The valves down at the service ports are still open. I did not change that at all when I shut off the pump after getting it down for a while. So, like I said, 45 minutes of running this, and then I'll disconnect it and I'll be able to proceed to other tasks on the project. I've turned the vacuum pump off. I had it running for about an hour because I got tied up with the radiator. And I have shut off the valves up there. And now I'm going to go shut off the valves down below and then pop those off. Like I said, I'm planning on doing this again, evacuating it again before I actually see, these are counterclockwise to close. Or in other words, the direction that it'll turn. Okay, valves are closed. Easy release. They do push on securely. You can tell that you still got a seal even as you're pulling up on the quick release. So don't forget, put the caps back on to keep dirt out of the Schrader valves. Again, these are different sizes, so they'll only go on one. Okay. There you have it. I will disassemble my manifold and put put it in the case, and it'll come back out when I'm ready to charge the system, which will be after I get the car running. I have so many things I've put on new. I'm not even going to hook up the air conditioner or the power steering belts before I start it, because that will take two things that I have to check for leaks and running properly out of the situation whenever I fire it up. So thanks for watching this.